In our first installment of Cultural Wealth in the Hood, we explore the subcultural punk phenomenon of power violence through an interview with Oxnard, California's first power violence label, DIY Noise. Musically, Oxnard is generally known for its 80s nardcore punk scene, and in more recent times for world-renowned underground hip-hop producer, Madlib. DIY Noise continues the musical tradition by providing us with one of punk's most abrasive manifestations, power violence. Power violence emerged as a more extreme subculture within punk during the late 80s and took a more collective shape as a scene in the following decade. With bands such as Infest, PHC, Man is the Bastard, No Comment, Crossed Out, Spaz, and Charles Bronson, among others, the power violence scene burgeoned throughout much of the 90s and has continued to enjoy notoriety well into the present. El Rio, a working-class farm worker community within Oxnard, is home to DIY Noise Records. From his home at the Royal Duke Mobile Estates, founder and owner, Eric Carrillo, sat down with us to describe what DIY Noise is all about. Alright, what up? So, we're here in the headquarters of DIY Noise in El Rio, California, and we're interviewing the founder, owner, and the main mover and shaker of DIY Noise. So, Eric Carrillo, aka Sordo to some of you. So, we'll start off, can you tell us a little bit about how the label started, like where the urge to start a label originated?
Yeah, it happened a year ago in June, so the 1 year anniversary passed, and it started because nobody wanted to put out the Sordo demo. This is my power violence band with my brother Jerry.
Shout out to Jerry,
holding the
cameraman.
And I said to Give Praise and to Live a Lie, and those are the only two labels that I knew. And they rejected it, saying it was cool stuff, but they just didn't want to put it out. So I'm like, alright, well, I'll try and put it out myself. Before I wanted to put it out myself, I wanted to practice on some other band and see if I could do it. And I experimented with tapes for a bit, and I found that I could do tapes. So I put up a message on the Power Violence page on Facebook saying if there's anybody who wanted to put out a tape. And this band from Georgia hit me up named Gripe. They're cool dudes. And they're like, yeah, we'll do a tape. So I did them. A release that they had, that was a web-only release, Gripes, The Future Doesn't Need You. And I made 50 copies, and I did everything like all DIY, like inserts, made a paper on my printer. I bought a bunch of old cassettes from the thrift store and just
cool.
recycled the cassettes, and I dubbed over the cassettes, and that's how I used to first do the first ones. And after that, I just started selling them for like $2 a piece, and they got their stuff. And it was just a really good tape. It eventually sold out. Everybody really liked it, and then I got a message from other bands saying that I want to put them out. And it just snowballed up after that with like all these other bands that just wanted tapes and stuff.
Were they like local bands from Ventura County?
No, it was mainly just bands from out of the area. The second band that I did was, well, it was actually a Ventura band. Our buddy band, One Hate. They were like PV, drum and bass. That was the second one I did. The third one I did was from Mexico. It was Calafia Puta. It was Power Violence band from Tijuana.
Oh, wow.
And I did them, and then the fourth one was, I think, this grind band from New York. One of the two. But I just, it was like everywhere. I had from Finland to some Minsk bands. I had a Japan band, all these Malaysian bands.
Oh, wow.
Indonesian bands, like everywhere. And it's just like, I didn't think everybody would be so stoked on it, but people want tapes and they want tapes. So.
Wow, no, that's awesome. And it, it's funny because traditionally here in Ventura County, we've had a lot of music that's been produced here and subcultures and stuff and although people don't automatically think of Ventura County as cool music comes from there, usually they think about LA as the main hub and maybe San Francisco, San Diego, the bigger cities. But here, we've had the 80s nardcore bands, and then in the 90s you still had bands, and even in the 2000s, you even had the hip hop Loop Pack and cool underground hip hop Madlib. But how do you think your power violence label, your grind label, how does it fit into all this? What's the response? Do people think about it as part of this bigger scene, or is it all really just kind of separated and segregated?
Really, what it is, it's just me, in my room, and I dub tapes right here. As far as like LA and like all the other things, Ventura doesn't know about me at all. It's just like, you know, pockets of bands and people who know me and who get the music out through there. So my whole thing wasn't about to be a label just to be a label. It was to help out bands and help them, you know, give them merch so that they could take on the road with them on tour and just to sell, you know, shows. So the intentions weren't to like, you know, put bands out to make cash and get a cash flow going. It was just to help bands purely. And you know, I still try and as much as I can stay true to that without, you know, going broke. But it's all basically the same thing. LA, it's like whatever. I'm not really known. It's just like the single people in like pockets of areas that know about me, like the stuff I do. Stuff like that.
So that's weird. Like, it's funny you're mentioning that like bands from like Malaysia and on all these other countries like Scotland.
Yeah.
You know, people on the East Coast, like in Japan. You even put out a release by a Japanese band.
Yeah.
You know, really popular worldwide band, Unholy Grave.
Yeah.
But like then here, like it's like you're like not known. That's how do you?
Yeah,
I mean, not that you're doing it for the fame, but how do you like? You know, like I'm known in other places more than in my own county.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think about that, or what do you think about that? Like,
I don't mind. I don't like the scene at all. I mean, the reason why my brother and I started a band was because, you know, we just didn't relate with what everybody else liked. You know, we liked hardcore punk and everybody else liked pop punk. Other stuff that wasn't pop punk. Like I consider the Queers pop punk, you know, those guys consider I don't know, All Time Low pop punk. It's like okay, whatever. It's like lame stuff. But it doesn't bother me that people don't know about me. I mean, it's I run the label to help bands. It's not about me, like how many people get to know me. All I really care about is if people who get tapes done through me is they get to sell them to people to help them out and help their band get, you know, more known and help them out on tour and stuff.
Cool. Like then another, you know, related to that is like, you know, you guys are from El Rio, you know, is like a, you know, predominantly like Latino Mexican farming community and within Oxnard, I guess, or another neighborhood within Oxnard. And you know, I was reading this article that this other friend who was in a power violence band too, or like a hardcore band, Rilo. He sent me this really cool article, and it was this blog that was talking about the '80s disco party scene in LA, you know. And the author mentioned something that we kind of talked about in the interview with Sordo, that, you know, he said boredom and like the limited options for like youth, like caused them to create this DJ, like, you know, disco scene in East LA. So like, and in other parts of LA. But for you, like, what role? Because I know when I got into punk, I was bored and it gave me something cool to do, productive. But what role would you say, like, boredom or like maybe those limited options available, like, for you when you were younger or now? Or I mean, did that have a role, if anything? Or
it did.
Why did, I mean, besides the cultural interest, but
yeah.
What other stuff influence? Like, do you think this article maybe can relate to you, or?
It was boredom, definitely. I work at my old high school as a kitchen's aide to the chef, and pretty much we work the hours that the school works, so we get weekends off, and then we have the entire summer off too. So I've only been working 3 years. It'll be my third year this next year that I'm going to be going back to work. When I was off, I was just doing nothing. You know, I was still getting like my checks from work, and I was just sitting around the house all day, like just playing games and stuff. So it really did come out of boredom somewhat. A lot of it, you know, just came out of my, you know, doing it for the scene and like paying it forward to help others. You know, if I wanted my band to get somewhere, I'd probably have to help out some other people in other bands, you know, get what they wanted too. So like doing the label and doing stuff, it was a way for me to put the sort of the music out too. You know, I hook up with a cool band who I just put out. I put out a split between the Scotland band Corrupt Humanity. It was him and a band from, I think, Indonesia, Sheng Kwan Ling Feng. They did a split, and I sent him my stuff, and he's like, "Oh, we should do a split." So, alright, cool, you know. So we did it. So we have a split in Scotland. Corrupt Humanity. David McLennan is a cool dude. Like, I love you, Dave. How's it going, Dave? Anyway, Dave's a rad dude. I don't know. He's just super supportive of everything we do. And boredom, especially, you know, just do something for punk, you know. Everyone likes to say, oh, support your scene. It's like, well, what are you doing other than playing a show every other weekend? It's like, you're not doing anything. You're just playing a show, you know. Like, I felt what I'm doing was more than what other bands are doing when they were just playing shows, you know. I was playing a show every once in a while and then putting out, you know, music that people wouldn't give a chance to put out in other places, you know. So a lot of it was just paying it forward, boredom, and I think that's about it.
Cool. Like, how would you define, obviously, you know, grind power violence, you know what you're gonna get, you know, just extreme fast, like, you know, music that, you know, hurts your ears, that even some people within hardcore, like, oh, I listen to everything, but I can't, you know, stand grind or whatever. But, like, how would you, you know, define the spectrum that you cover in your label?
Anything, you know. I don't just, like, a lot of people say it's a grind label or it's a power violence style. I was like, I don't want that, you know, because it's all about hopping the bands, you know, it's about DIY. And, like, I know I've heard from people that they didn't send their demo to me originally because they thought I wouldn't take it. They're just band from Texas. They weren't grind, they weren't power violence, but they were just like garage rock. And they kind of like said like, oh, we didn't really want to do it. And I'm like, no, just send it, you know, I'll put it out, you know. And then I have another pop punk band from Texas called Mrs. Howell. They're playing like, you know, Madonna's, I don't know what exactly the music was, but you know, I was like, yeah, it's cool. And then I got black metal from Minnesota. Eddie, is it Allison or Oddman? I forget his name, but yeah, it's like everything. I don't like to limit myself to just one genre. You know, I consider that elitism, where it's like, oh, if you're not this, oh, you suck. I don't even want to get to know you. It's like, no, it's like music's music. You're connected through music, not through what kind of music you listen to. It's just like, you know, and all forms of underground music are against the main, you know, corporatized music, you know. So that's the real enemy, you know. It's not, you're not fighting another sub-genre. You're supposed to be fighting the main genre who's ruining music, you know. And that was the whole point, you know. I don't like to limit myself to just one genre. I'll do anything, you know. I've done rap. My brother has a side hip-hop project that he does. I've done, I think I just dropped blank all of a sudden, but it's definitely more than one genre. I don't like to limit myself to any just one thing.
Wow, awesome, cool. Like I you know, and that's funny because like you always have like the misperception that like when people only like, especially with like more extreme forms, that like that's what they like, only fast. But you know, you're totally breaking that you know stereotype or that you know that image that people have of like power violence and grime, that's all there is.
Yeah.
But then also what issues have you encountered then? We were speaking earlier, you know, when we first met, about certain challenges or you know, working internationally. You talked about, you know, Malaysia, Japan, Scotland. I know Colombia, you have a band from Colombia that you work with. But what difficulties have you encountered with the label?
The main thing is just shipping out bands' royalty copies. You know, like, I don't make money as it is, like too much money. But everybody, you know, kind of has this feeling like, oh, it's the USA. You know, everybody's rich in the USA. Or you're in California, that's like the best state to live in. But like me, just being here, it's like, you know, I'm by myself. Nobody else helps me. I don't really work like the best job. Still going to school, balancing my family. You know, and it's like. You know, this, there's an instance where this band from Malaysia, it's always from Malaysia, like bands, they're really poor, Psychotic Sufferance, the guys, they just couldn't afford to get their stuff out. Like, it was a point where I couldn't afford to ship their copies out. So we had to work out a deal. It's like, okay, I'll send you the first 15 copies, you know, you gotta sell them, and if you can sell them and reimburse me to ship out your next 15 copies, you know, I'll get those out to you. So yeah, cool, whatever, sure. So I sent them the copies, and unfortunately, you know, they never reimbursed me. So I still have half of their tapes just sitting here. It's been here for like 4 months already, and it's like, you know, like I don't like to call people out on it or say anything about it. I just leave it as is, you know. So I'll probably have those for like the next year, and probably be worth something in the future. I'll just rip them open and sell them like eBay or something. So, but definitely international shipping cost, and then the language barrier too. A lot of times it's like I have a band from Indonesia that doesn't speak English very well, and they're like trying to read their broken English, and you know, we have our vernacular and our slang. I remember one time there was a split trying to be organized, and my brother told the other band, like, yeah, we're down. And they replied, what does down mean? And, and then he posted back, like, yeah, we agree to do it. And so it's just things like that, it makes it difficult. And other than that, it's just, that's the main thing, just cost effectiveness, being able to ship stuff out.
And that's a trip, man, because like you mentioned something really. Oh, so you were talking about, sorry for the take two. So you were talking about how, like, the language barrier?
Yeah, I think the last thing I mentioned was the language barrier, sorry. It's just difficult sometimes to talk to bands from outside of the U.S. or just in, like, Eastern Asia countries. It's just, like, the English isn't that great, or, you know, it's difficult sometimes to organize stuff, and then you get confused on like agreements. Or one time there was a thing where I was supposed to send this guy from France some tapes plus it was supposed to be a master CD plus some covers so he can dub his own tapes, and I didn't understand what he meant at the time. But afterwards, after rereading it a couple times, I'm like, oh, okay, this is what he wanted. But it was already to the point where I just cut off talking with him because I didn't want to like mess something up where he would get mad or you know, we would be unhappy with the agreement if it hadn't turned out right.
So like before like our battery died, we talked about how you know, you mentioned something really deep, like here you're dealing with your own challenges here, like your life, you know, like issues, job, like money, like funds, and it's not like you're freaking living in wealth, you know, and you have this, you know, endless supply of resources. And over there too, like, you know, those folks in other countries, and, you know, developing countries or whatever, they're also dealing with their own challenges. So it's weird how they kind of both, you know, intersect, like, and like it makes me think of like, you know, like how do you feel like you can, like, is this something that like you expect to keep on going with a label if you keep on working internationally, or like how do you seek to address it in a way where you're not like looked on as a jerk, but like you're also like, you know, you're also having like your ends, you know, your ends are being met, your needs are being met as well. How do you feel like?
I remember the first time when I was first starting out, I was just doing cassettes of old tapes. So like I had some like 30 Kenny Rogers tapes, and I just dubbed over those, and they came with the case and everything. And people would complain about me, you know, and it's like, well, you're complaining about getting free tapes, plus you're complaining about, you know, something that isn't really supposed to be a label deal. It's just like something I do in my free time, help bands out, that's the whole thing. And so I started buying blank tapes, and I had to buy, you know, separate cases and stuff. And, you know, at the rate I was putting out tapes, it was almost like one every other day. Not one every other day, one every other week. I was putting out a different tape from a different band. And it just got so overwhelming at such a fast rate, you know, and like all the international bands contacting me and, you know, asking for their royalty copies, and it's like, okay, you know, I don't have all this stuff, you know. I had to either like do something like stop sending the bands so many copies for royalties. In the beginning, I was sending them about 80% of the copies. So out of like 50 tapes, I'd send them 40. I'd pay shipping, and then I'd keep 10, and that was supposed to like, you know, I was supposed to make back everything that they had spent to just stay even, you know. And that was the whole thing. And you know, a lot of the times I was losing money, and it got to the point where, because I was putting out so much stuff, I was losing like $20 for every release. And I was doing so many, and eventually I had to start buying real blank tapes because people were getting mad that I was dubbing over the older tapes. So you have like grind on one side and then some country music on the other side. People didn't like that, so like, alright. And then people started getting mad at the fact that I wasn't using like real color tapes. I was just spraying over tapes, you know, and people didn't like that. It ruined the audio reel. It'd catch on, or it'd make the tape drop in and out of the sound. So just a bunch of little things, you know, and finally got to the point where it's like, okay, look, I can't do all of them. There was a point where I just stopped, like, taking requests, and I just said, okay, if you're going to email me, I'm not even going to answer you back. So there was a few, like, a good chunk of email, like 30 or so. And it was just people who were just demanding tapes and demanding services without even so much as taking up an actual conversation with me. They just saw me as this guy who had like, oh, this guy's got tapes, you know, he can put our stuff out. Let's hit him up and get free tapes. It's like, no, it's not like that, you know. If you're gonna, yeah, it's like going out with a girl. You don't just go up there and say, hey, can I get into your pants, you know, like get a conversation going, you know, and talk to them, you know. It's like get to know them. And so, you know, if it's to the point where if I had to choose between someone who had a load of cash to help me out with something or setting up an actual friendship, you know, I would go with the guy who. I would go with the guy who, you know, I would lose money but to start up a friendship with, rather than the guy who I don't really talk with and paying me for the services, because, you know, it's more about that, just hooking up with people and stuff. So I mean, like now with the next couple of tapes I'm going to be doing, I'm not going to be ordering, you know, 500 stock Blake cassettes. I'm probably get like 200 and then put out one every other, like one a month. That's like my new aim. Just start putting out stuff that I want to put out, and, you know, help bands that I would like to put out. Even though it kind of goes against my whole reasoning and behind starting the label, I just feel like it's better for me, you know, just because, like, you know, some people can be assholes, you know, in this scene, and it's like, I don't want that. I don't want negative people, you know, messing with me, and I don't want negative people, you know, poisoning my label, and then if something didn't turn out the way they wanted to, you know, I'd say, well, go ahead and do it yourself then, you know. See how long it takes you to do it, you know. People don't see what it takes me to do a tape, you know, so they don't understand, like, the stress that comes with it, and, you know, the busting your ass to get the tapes that they want so they can get on tour. You know, they just see, like, you know, their wants against the needs. So, it's a bunch of things like that.
Cool. So then, how many people here in your neighborhood know that there's, like, you know, a label, like, you know, neighbors and stuff, or anybody here, like, how many people know that there's somebody here that's collaborating with, like, people from, like, all over the world and putting out music? Like, I mean, does anybody, like, family or anybody locally here, like, recognize that there's, like, a cool label? Like, it's like a cool, you know, somebody that's producing something coal. Like, does anybody know? Your family, your folks, uncles, like, neighbors, like?
Nobody really cares. I mean, I'm the only one who cares about it, and, you know, I kind of knew since the beginning I was going to be the only one doing this. You know, I tried getting my brother to help me out, but he's got his own life, you know. I don't want him to, like, intrude on him and his personal life, and, you know, I think my family, you know, my mom especially, she knows that I do it, but she doesn't really care. It's like, oh, that's his thing, whatever. You know, my close friends, they know about what I do, but it's not so much of a thing because I deal in, like, small numbers, you know, like a run of 50 cassettes on tape, and they're all into, like, you know, like metal, like Dream Theater and stuff, and, you know, multi-million-dollar sales. I don't even know. I'm just talking shit right now, but no, not many people know. I try and get people, like, into it, but, you know, when they ask about what kind of music I do, it's like Brian PV, like, oh, I don't even know what that is, so I don't really care.
And then, like, also, like, you know, sometimes, you know, and, like, we talked about it too in the solo interview, and I think it's a theme that's really important, like, because I feel sometimes people try to minimize, because it's punk and because they say, oh, this is an easy subculture, it's just 3 chords and fast music, but they minimize, you know, the significance of certain punk groups or certain punk scenes or whatever. But let's go! Sometimes people tend to look at our communities in terms of, like, deficits and its problems, but you're demonstrating that, like, you know, despite all the challenges in any neighborhood, you know, everything people go through, that, like, you know, people take matters into their own hands and they create things and they do things, whether it be like the little mercados or the little supermarkets here, or, like, the little stands. You're straight up producing music, you know, like, regardless of what type of music it is, you're producing something. But, you know, have you released other bands from around here? I know you mentioned there was bands here, but have you released anything from Oxnard, like, and bands from El Rio?
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure we're the only band from El Rio. My brother's nodding no, but I wouldn't know about any of the bands from El Rio.
The Avocados.
The Avocados. Oh. I remember you guys mentioned that.
Okay,
well, they were the modernists at first, and then the Avocados.
I don't know them.
They're good.
They don't exist. I'm kidding. No, that's not right. But I did Violent Americans from Oxnard. What else? One Hate from Ventura. Sweldo from Moorpark. My brother, who's a rapper, did him. I guess you can count him as Oxnard.
Ox City.
Any other bands? I can't really think of any more from the area. Yeah, it's mainly just other parts. You know, I think because I haven't done so many local bands, a lot of the local peeps don't really catch to what I'm doing. You know, it's like, oh, I don't like the bands, so I'm not gonna do them. But I like other bands, and other bands are grind bands. So unless they're a grind band, I obviously must not like them. Like that too. So.
And I guess that brings us kind of towards the, you know, the end of the interview. And like, what does the future hold for DIY Noise? Like, what do you want to do with the label? Like, do you want to eventually put out LPs and EPs, 7-inches? Like, do you want to, you know, move on to more bigger things, or what exactly would you want to do?
After a while, I'm just gonna stop it. It's just I don't see myself doing this and music altogether. I just see myself stopping. I think when I hit 30, I don't see myself as an adult just, you know, being angry all the time. You know, like I'm angry now about a lot of things just bother me. You know, I think if I'm still angry at something and I know that I'm going against something, I'll keep doing the label. But you know, I think they'll get to a point where, you know, I want to have like a family and start raising kids. I don't want them to see like the stuff that I do and like listen to music that I listen to, because it's, you know, as much as it's a positive outlet, you know, it's also kind of, it dwells in negativity a lot of the time too.
Well, very true.
You know, and it's I don't see myself continuing to do this because, you know, as much as it is a positive outlet, I think it does tend to dwell in negativity. You know, the negative aspects of life, you know, like there's like all these grind bands, you know, we're guilty of it too. I am too, you know, putting like pictures of dead people on their covers, you know, like it's brutal, you know, it's extreme, but that's not like the thing that I want to focus on, you know. I want to focus, you know, on educating people and, you know, showing like what can be better in life, you know, if you make it, if you want it to be better, you know. If I keep putting out the same record of someone claiming how much they hate humanity and how corrupt the government is, it's like, yeah, you hate humanity, yeah, it's corrupt. How are you going to do anything about it? You know, you're going to keep making records and you're going to keep like protesting without actually protesting. You know, you're a veteran protester. You're not doing anything. You know, it's cool, you know, it's your art, you know, you got your artists and then you got your activists, you know. I guess I consider myself as an artist now, but I'd want to be more of an activist later on in my life and just do actual things that I think are meaningful. I'm not saying art isn't, you know, it's supposed to be a creative way to express yourself. And, you know, like I was saying before, I think by the time I learn how to control myself and my anger and just find a better way other than, you know, screaming my lungs out at a show, you know, I think, you know, it'll be the time when I say, okay, I'm going to stop. You know, it's fun, you know, I like doing what I'm doing, but it's just, you know, in the end, a lot more bad things outweigh the good things out of it, you know. Like, for every 10 people who I meet who are awesome, you know, there's 10 more on top of them who are just complete dicks. So it's like, and it has nothing to do with, like, you know, it being about punk or anything. You know, I think in anything you do, I think DIY Noise will just, you know, be everybody who is DIY Noise. I don't consider just what I do here DIY Noise. I think anybody who's taken a part of it, you know, is, you know, it's about the campaign, you know, the DIY campaign. You know, I don't consider myself a label. I just consider myself, you know, like a foot soldier in the DIY campaign against doing what other people aren't doing. You know? So that's the view I take on it. You know, yeah, I did my 7-inch of another band. We got our own 7-inch coming out. I think in the future I'll probably focus more on putting other stuff out and not so much, you know, like on tapes. But in some way, I hope to keep it sort of alive, but not like extremely super alive and active.
Cool. So aside, you know, from what you mentioned, what you want to do in the future, then what are some of your other personal goals then, like, and how do you see your creativity and your art and your views like kind of being aligned with some of your personal goals in the future?
I like to go to school and finish up, and get a degree, and start working. You know, what I really want to do is I want to get married. I have a girlfriend, and I want to have a family with her. And you know, I guess just educate people. You know, the music that we play now, we try to stick as many positive messages into the lyrics, but you know, the lyrics only go so far as like what people can decipher from what we're saying. You know? So if we're just screaming all the time, no one's gonna want to hear it. You know. Let's go! If I was able to, you know, put all of our lyrical matter into some other way where people would be interested in it, you know, like, and getting to know why there's more liquor stores in certain areas than there are recreation centers in other areas, you know, why someone may be forced into a situation where they're in extreme poverty, whereas other people aren't, you know, get people stoked on becoming educated, you know, get people wanting to go to school, picking themselves up out of their situation. A lot of people, they like to put themselves in the situation. They like to say things like, I can't do it because so-and-so is oppressing me. I can't do it because of where I come from. It's like, that's not true, you know. People will come over worse obstacles than, like, they are in, you know. I wouldn't consider myself extremely opulent or well off, but I'm sure as hell not the worst off. You know, there's people who in other countries who don't have the chance of education like I do. Like, I get paid to go to school. I have like all these fucking records here, and I have a tape machine that can just have fun. I got everything I could ever want, and I'm still here wanting more. You know, as an individual, I don't want that. I want to be able to be happy with what I have and enjoy life, and possibly get other people to do the same to make the world a better place, and not just a place of constant dwelling and negativity and just pessimism. It's just, you know, positive out and positive in all the time.
Wow, cool, man. Any last words or anything you would like to say?
Thank you, sir. Thank my brother for
cameraman.
Yeah.
Just big ups and big outs to everybody on DIY Noise, everybody who's helped out, my family who supports me some way or another, but you know, I like to name bands and people, but there's just too many. Yeah, that's about it.
Cool. And cut.
Aunque no nos quieran, somos delincuentes.
It's easier than editing fucking fanzine and doing other stuff, man.
You have to remember though, just generally speaking,